You ever notice how people wait their whole lives for something to change? Sit in traffic, sit in meetings, sit in relationships that feel like prison sentences, all waiting for some magical moment to show up. Like one day, out of nowhere, life's just gonna ring the bell and say, "Surprise, you've been chosen." But that's the joke, isn't it? The miracle's already here. It's been here. It's you. Sitting in your skin, beating in your chest, screaming behind your smile, begging to be let out. But no, most people are too busy looking at everyone else's package, hoping theirs looks shinier. They always expect miracles to arrive clean, don't they? Gift-wrapped, glittered, with a little card that says, "Here you go, you earned this." Like some polite delivery boy supposed to show up with everything you've ever wanted, no strings attached. But that's not how it works. No, no, no. Real miracles, they're messy, ugly even. They show up late, half drunk, missing pieces, and somehow, they're exactly what you needed. But most people don't see it because they're looking for gold and it comes covered in mud. You ask someone what they're waiting for and they'll say things like peace, love, success, a sign, maybe, something big, something beautiful. But the moment it shows up and doesn't look like a fairy tale, they panic. They reject it. This can't be it, they say. It's too complicated, too painful, too real. That's the joke. They don't recognize the answer to their prayers when it finally kicks the door in, wearing scars and a crooked smile. You want to know what a miracle really looks like? It looks like rock bottom. It looks like crying on the bathroom floor thinking it's the end and then hearing that tiny, desperate voice whisper, "Get up." It looks like heartbreak that cracks you wide open and lets the light in. It looks like losing everything and realizing you're still breathing, that you're still here. And suddenly, here becomes sacred. Survival becomes proof. And pain, well, pain becomes the wrapping paper you have to rip off to get to the damn gift. But most people miss it. They're too busy comparing their journey to someone else's highlight reel. Too busy chasing the miracles that look good on camera. They want the breakthrough without the breakdown. They want transformation without the terror. They want the magic trick, not the magician's blood under the fingernails. So they throw away the very thing that was meant to save them. They run from discomfort like it's the plague, never realizing that discomfort was the delivery method. That the storm didn't come to destroy. It came to deliver. See, no one tells you that your miracle might look like failure at first, might sound like rejection, might feel like abandonment. But that's only because it's wearing a disguise. It has to. If it showed up looking like everything you wanted, you'd cling to it for the wrong reasons. You wouldn't grow. You'd get comfort. And comfort, that's the real trap. Nothing blooms in a padded cell. Nothing changes when you're safe and silent. So the miracle shows up with sharp edges, forces you to bleed a little, and in that bleeding, you remember what it means to be alive. People think miracles should make life easier, but the real ones, they don't hand you anything. They demand everything. They demand you rise. They demand you let go of the version of you that settled, that stayed quiet, that played small. And it hurts. God, it hurts. But that pain, that's not punishment. That's permission. That's the miracle ripping away the lie so you can finally see the truth hiding underneath. You won't always recognize the moment it arrives. Might even curse it, hate it, call it unfair. But one day, you'll look back and realize that was it. That breakdown, that betrayal, That awful, ugly, inconvenient moment was the crack that let you escape the shell you were never meant to stay in. That was the miracle. Not because it gave you what you wanted, but because it burned away what you didn't need. And here's the real punchline. Some of you have already received it. Weeks ago, months ago, maybe even years. And you tossed it aside like junk mail. Didn't even open it, because you thought a miracle was supposed to feel good, that it would come with applause. But it didn't. It came with silence, or pain, or loss. And you mistook all that discomfort for punishment when it was actually your invitation, your wake-up call, your chance to rewrite the whole damn story. So now you sit here, still waiting, still hoping for some neon sign from the sky. But maybe, just maybe, it already came. Just not dressed the way you expected. Maybe it came screaming. Maybe it came in pieces. Maybe it came in the form of everything falling apart just so you could finally see what's been trying to come together. Maybe it's been there, right in front of you, the whole time. They always say patience is a virtue. Sit still, wait your turn, play nice, don't make noise, don't make mess, don't rattle the cage, and what do you get in return? A participation trophy and a slow death by routine. Because while you're waiting for the stars to align for the right time, the right mood, the right weather, life keeps moving. And by the time you realize it doesn't owe you a grand opening, well, the show's already over. See, that's the trick. They convince you the perfect moment is coming, that someday you'll feel ready, brave, healed, certain. And while you're sitting on your hands, polishing your potential, someone with half your talent and twice your madness is out there taking what could have been yours. They don't wait. They move, they jump with their eyes closed, they break things, they make noise, and guess what? The world makes room for them, not because they're special, but because they decided. They didn't need permission. But no, you're still sitting there, right? Rehearsing conversations that'll never happen. Replaying old failures like reruns of a show you hate but can't stop watching. Telling yourself you're just being cautious, that you're not ready yet. Let me tell you something. Ready is a myth, a bedtime story for people too afraid to leap. No one's ready, not really. They just decide the fear of missing out is louder than the fear of falling on their face. Waiting becomes a habit, an addiction, a cage you built yourself. Next week I'll start, next month I'll try, next year I'll be better. And just like that, the calendar becomes your excuse. As if time is going to knock on your door and ask, "Are you ready now?" No, it doesn't knock. It runs. And if you're not running with it, you're already behind. You've been trained to believe that hesitation equals intelligence, that overthinking is wisdom, that doubt is a sign of depth. But sometimes it's just fear in a fancy costume. Sometimes it's the voice that's been keeping you small, quiet, tame. And you call it safety, but really, it's the slow suffocation of who you were meant to become. You dress it up in logic, in timing, in responsibility, but it's just fear, plain and simple. Fear wearing a necktie. What they don't tell you is that the perfect moment never knocks. It crashes, it barges in uninvited, while you're in the middle of your worst day, when your hair's a mess and your hands are shaking. That's when it shows up. That's when it dares you to answer. And most people, they slam the door, because it didn't look like a miracle. It looked like chaos, like uncertainty, like work. So they wait for a prettier version to come along that doesn't The tragedy isn't that people fail, it's that they never try. They sit on the edge of the pool forever, dipping one toe in and calling it strategy. They read every book, watch every motivational clip, nod their heads like they're ready to change the world, and then go right back to the life that's choking them. Because it's familiar. Because it's safe. Because even misery feels comfortable when you worn it long enough. Every minute you wait is a minute you can't get back. Every second you stall is another chance slipping through your fingers like smoke. And the worst part, you know it. You feel it, that ache, that burn, that pulse under your skin whispering, there's more, there's more. But instead of acting on it, you silence it. You scroll, you sleep, you stay busy. You bury the call under routines and responsibilities and reasons that sound smart but feel hollow. They want you to believe that great things come to those who wait, but great things come to those who move, who act before the applause, who jump before the bridge is built, who make art out of their panic and dance with their doubt. Those are the ones who get the miracle. Not because they earned it, but because they were reckless enough to reach for it. You keep thinking the miracle is out there, somewhere down the road, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's right here, right now, breathing down your neck, daring you to stop hesitating. Maybe the real miracle isn't some external event. Maybe it's the moment you finally stop waiting and start choosing, not because you're ready, but because you're done pretending you need to be. Do you ever look in the mirror and wonder if maybe, just maybe, the thing you've been begging the universe for has been staring back the whole damn time? They all want some big miracle to drop from the sky like a scene out of a movie. Lightning bolts, trumpets, angels singing. But no one ever stops to think, what if you are the miracle? Not the polished version, not the smiling, well-adjusted one they post about. I'm talking about the raw one, the one with the haunted eyes and unfiltered thoughts, the one who survived things you don't even have words for. They tell you to go find your purpose, as if it ran away, as if it's hiding behind a job title or in the arms of someone who pretends to love you on weekends. But what they don't tell you is that purpose doesn't come gift-wrapped. It bleeds out of you when everything else has been taken. When you've been dragged across the coals and somehow, you keep getting up. That's where the miracle lives. Not out there. In you. Buried under all the shame, the silence, the should-haves and never-dids. See, most people spend their whole lives looking for something to save them. A sign, a person, a breakthrough. But the truth is too uncomfortable to swallow, so they choke it down with distractions. Because the truth is, they're not looking for a miracle. They're avoiding the one that's already there. Because if you admit that you are the miracle, that means you're responsible for what happens next. And that kind of power, it terrifies people more than failure ever could. You walk into rooms and people feel it. They don't know what it is, they can't explain it, but they feel it. That weight, that presence, that I've seen hell and lived to laugh about it kind of energy. You don't even have to speak, you just exist and the air shifts. That's not coincidence, that's not luck. That's your miracle brushing up against the parts of them they've been trying to keep buried. But here's the sick twist. No one's going to congratulate you for being it. They're not going to hand you a certificate for surviving, no standing ovation for not breaking when you had every reason to. In fact, most of them won't even notice. Because you're not loud about your wounds. You bleed in private, then show up in public like you've never bled at all. That's what they don't see. That's the mirror. Quiet, violent, holy. And you've been walking around like you're waiting for someone to activate you, like you're a machine that needs a switch, when the truth is, you've been on this whole time, just covered in static, covered in noise, drowning in rules and roles and routines that were never meant for someone like you. You weren't built to blend in. You weren't born to wait for permission. You were made to shake foundation, to question things, to break cycles. And every time you tried to play it safe, something inside you cracked. That crack, that was your miracle, screaming to be let out. The reason it hurts so much when you ignore it is because you know deep down you weren't meant for the kind of life that fits neatly in a box. You weren't made for silent suffering and subtle exits. You were made for impact, for noise, for fire. But no one told you that. They told you to behave, to be good, to follow the plan. And somewhere along the line, you started thinking your miracle would only come if you were perfect enough to deserve it. Deserve it. But that's the joke. You already had it. Even when you were broken. Especially when you were broken. They'll say you're arrogant for claiming your own power. They'll call it ego when you finally stop asking for their approval. Let them choke on their expectations, because while they're out there still begging for signs, still waiting for lightning, still praying for change, you'll be out there living like the miracle already arrived. Because it did. It's just wearing your skin, walking on your feet, staring out of your eyes. No spotlight needed, no applause, just you and the world finally meeting on your terms. And suddenly, all that waiting, all that wishing, all that wondering, it burns away. Because you finally realize the miracle wasn't something to receive, it was something to unleash. Funny thing about chaos, people act like it's the enemy, like it snuck in one day and ruined all their pretty little plans. But here's what they don't tell you. Chaos doesn't ruin things, it reveals them. It strips the wallpaper off your fake smiles, kicks over the lies you keep stacked like furniture and says, let's see what you're really made of. And most people, they panic because they spent so long building this illusion of control, they forgot how to feel anything real without it. You ever watch someone fall apart and call it a breakdown, when really it's the first time they've felt alive in years? The job goes, the lover leaves, the mask slips, and suddenly they're gasping for air like they were drowning the whole time. That's chaos, not the villain, the catalyst. It doesn't show up to destroy you, it shows up to destroy what's not you. The roles, the rules, the scripts you've been performing like a good little actor. You weren't living, you were memorizing. Chaos just forgot its cue and walked on stage early. People pray for change and then curse the storm that brings it. Like they wanted transformation to show up in a 3-piece suit with a bouquet, not a wrecking ball. But what else would it take? You think comfort's gonna wake you up? You think silence is gonna set your soul on fire? No, it takes pressure, heat, noise. Something loud enough to drown out the lies you whisper to yourself just to make it through another day. Chaos doesn't break you. It breaks the illusion of you. And for some people, that's unbearable. The hardest part, chaos doesn't knock. It doesn't schedule an appointment. It crashes through the ceiling while you're sipping your morning coffee. And in that moment, you've got two choices. Grab a broom or grab a mirror. Most people grab the broom, try to clean it up, patch the cracks, go back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was the cage. Normal was the thing keeping the miracle locked behind bars. It's not pretty, this process. Chaos doesn't care about your timeline, doesn't care how long you've held it together. It doesn't ask how many people are depending on you or what version of yourself you've been selling to the world. It just rips, tears, exposes. Because that's what truth does. It shatters before it heals. You want a miracle? Be ready to bleed for it. Be ready to lose everything you thought you needed. Be ready to look in the mirror and not recognize what's staring back, because that's the moment you know it's working. You know why most people avoid chaos like the plague? Because deep down they know it works. They know if they let the chaos in, even for a second, it'll change everything. And that's terrifying. It's easier to complain about the cage than admit you've got the key. It's safer to blame the storm than admit you've been praying for rain. Because once chaos does its job, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. You can't fit in the same box you used to sleep in. And that kind of freedom, it's too big for most people to handle. They call it losing control, but what you're really losing is the lie, the story that says you're not enough, the belief that you have to earn your worth, that you have to stay small to be loved. Chaos burns all that to the ground. Not gently, not quietly. It screams, it crashes, it throws your furniture out the window and sets fire to your plans. And in the middle of all that wreckage, something begins to breathe. Something real, something raw. Something that was never allowed to exist in your perfectly organized life. So while the world keeps preaching stability, predictability, safety, you start to see the beauty in the breakdown, the poetry in the mess. You start to realize maybe the chaos isn't outside of you. Maybe it's always been inside, banging on the walls, trying to get your attention, and all the times you ignored it, silenced it, medicated it, you were killing your own resurrection. Because chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's the price of evolution. It's what happens right before the miracle gets loud enough to finally be heard. And when it hits, when the ground splits and the sky falls and everything you leaned on crumbles, that's when you realize it didn't come to ruin your life, it came to ruin the lie you were calling life. Because underneath all the rubble, underneath the fear and the failure and the false smiles, something is waiting. Something ancient, something powerful, something that's been screaming your name while you were too busy trying to keep it all together. You ever seen someone open a gift, look at it for a second, and then toss it aside because it didn't come in the wrapping they wanted? Happens every day. People praying for a miracle, begging the universe to deliver something that'll save them, fix them, give their life meaning. And then when it finally shows up, they blink, scoff, and walk away because it doesn't sparkle, doesn't match the fantasy they built in their head, doesn't come with applause, confetti, or Instagram likes. So they miss it. They miss everything because they're too busy looking for a version that's prettier than the truth. See, real gifts don't show up clean. They show up when you're tired, when you're angry, when you're raw and bitter and have nothing left to give. That's when the miracle knocks. Not politely either, it kicks the damn door in. But if you're too focused on appearances, if you think miracles have to look holy or polite or poetic, then you'll never even recognize it. You'll spit on it, judge it, call it a problem instead of a blessing, and then go right back to waiting for something you already had but were too blind to hold. They don't tell you this part, that sometimes your miracle looks like heartbreak, like isolation, like losing every fake friend you ever collected. Sometimes it walks in looking like failure, sounding like betrayal. Sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it wrecks your ego before it even touches your soul. Because the miracle doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your waking up. And comfort, that's the thing killing most people slowly while they smile and post motivational quotes they don't even believe. You keep asking for change, but you ignore the door it walks through. You want light, but you won't step into the dark long enough to find the switch. You want strength, but curse the weight that was sent to build it. That's how this works. You don't get the miracle by skipping the storm. You get it by standing in the middle of it, soaked and screaming, and realizing you didn't break, you bent, and somehow that's stronger than never falling at all. Most people want the shortcut, the version of the miracle that comes without the lesson, but it doesn't work that way. You don't find your fire in a seminar or a YouTube clip. You find it when life strips you down and laughs in your face, and instead of curling up, you look back and laugh louder. That's the moment. That's when the miracle opens its eyes, not when you're polished, not when you're ready, but when you've been torn apart and still have the nerve to keep standing. People think miracles are for the chosen ones, the special ones, the ones who have it all together. But let me let you in on a little secret. The miracle chooses the messy ones, the broken ones, the misfits and rejects and quiet time bombs who look fine on the outside but are screaming on the inside. Because those are the only ones who won't waste it. They know what it costs. They've lived in the dark long enough to respect the light when it finally shows up. And when it does show up, it won't come with instructions. It won't say, "Hello, I'm your miracle." It'll test you, confuse you, make you question everything you thought was real. It'll show up dressed as a breakdown, as a terrible decision, as something that looks like the worst day of your life. But when the smoke clears, when the dust settles, you'll realize it wasn't chaos. It was a key, a door, a reset button that smashed everything false so something real could crawl out from underneath. But only if you're paying attention, only if you stop looking for pretty signs and start listening to the ugly truths, only if you stop treating pain like punishment and start seeing it as the birthplace of something divine, because that's where the miracle hides. Not in the neat, not in the clean, not in the stuff that fits your expectations. It hides in the wild, in the wreck. In the moment you finally stop performing and start being. And maybe, just maybe, that's the whole trick. Maybe the miracle isn't about receiving something. Maybe it's about recognizing what's already inside you. Something raw, something reckless, something they tried to shame out of you. But it's still there, waiting, growling, burning holes through every lie you wrapped around it. And one day, when you're finally done playing small, when you're finally done saying maybe later to your own power, you'll look back and realize it was there the whole time. You just didn't like the way it was wrapped. They think power comes with a title, a paycheck, a stage, a spotlight. They think it's something external, something granted, like a crown placed on your head by someone with more clout, more fame, more whatever. But real power, the kind that makes people nervous when you walk into a room, that's born in the dark, in silence, in the ugly places. It's earned when you've got nothing left, when your back's against the wall and the world's betting on you to break. And you don't. You bend. You scream. You bleed. But you don't vanish. And that's when it starts to grow. See, survival's not glamorous. It's not poetic. It's gritty. It's shaking in the shower and showing up to work anyway. It's pretending to laugh while everything inside you is caving in. It's staying alive when every voice in your head is daring you to quit. But if you make it through that, if you claw your way through that kind of silence, you come out with something no degree, no trophy, no applause can give you. You come out with authority, not over people, over yourself, over the narrative, over the thing that tried to bury you. And they don't teach you that. They don't give medals for not dying emotionally. No one throws a parade when you don't collapse under the pressure of pretending everything's okay. You get no praise for staying alive when it would have been easier not to. But that's the thing. The real ones don't need the parade. They become the noise. They walk different, talk different, look you in the eye without flinching. Because once you've survived your own mind, nothing out here scares you anymore. The miracle people keep waiting for is not in the stars, it's in the wounds, in the quiet victories no one sees, in the nights where you cried so hard your chest hurt and still got up the next morning like it was just another Tuesday. That's not weakness, that's not drama, that's power, raw, unfiltered, nuclear, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it can be felt before it's heard. And that scares people. Oh, they'll never admit it, but it makes them uncomfortable because they've been faking strength their whole lives, dressing it up in job titles, designer clothes, filtered selfies. So when someone walks in carrying actual strength, the kind forged in fire, they don't know what to do with that. They'll call you intense, difficult, too much. But what they're really saying is, you remind me of everything I've buried. Let them squirm. Let them project. Because while they were avoiding their shadows, you were dancing with yours. While they were chasing validation, you were busy rebuilding yourself out of ruins. And now here you are, alive, awake, dangerous in all the ways they told you not to be. Not because you've never been hurt, but because you've been hurt and still chose to rise. That kind of resilience, you can't fake that. Most people avoid pain like it's poison, but you drank it. You made it your medicine. You learned the taste. You stopped running, and now it's not pain that owns you. It's you who owns the pain. It bends to you, works for you, turns into fuel, into wisdom, into the sharp edge of your truth. And truth cuts cleaner than any lie comfort ever told you. They say scars are ugly, but only to people who've never bled for something real. Only to people who still think survival is about staying pretty. It's not. It's about staying present. It's about standing in your own ashes and realizing you're still breathing, still here, still you. And maybe, just maybe, that version of you, the one who knows what it costs to rebuild, is the most powerful thing to ever walk this planet. You don't need their approval. You don't need their applause. You don't even need their understanding. Because you've already won the war they didn't even know you were fighting. And the best part? You didn't win by being stronger. You won by being real, by being you. The unfiltered, unedited, unapologetic version of yourself that was buried under expectations, shame, fear. You dug that version out with your bare hand. And now it walks with you, sleeps with you, stares back at you in the mirror, and dares the world to try you again. Because once you've survived what was meant to break you, you don't come back the same. You come back louder, not in volume, but in presence, in energy, in the kind of silence that makes people listen. You don't have to scream. You are the scream. The living proof that pain isn't the end. It's the beginning of something far more dangerous than comfort could ever dream of producing. Something wild, something holy, something they'll never quite be able to define. Funny thing about being unforgettable, it rarely starts with trying to be. You don't wake up one day and decide, today I'll haunt someone's mind forever. No, it's not how this works. You get dragged into it, kicked into it. You bleed your way into someone's psyche, not through perfection, but through impact, through chaos, through the kind of presence that doesn't ask permission to exist. You think people remember polite, predictable, safe? No. They remember the spark that burned a hole through their expectations. They remember the moment everything stopped feeling normal. And that moment was you. You want to be forgettable? Be like everyone else. Keep your head down. Nod when they speak. Smile when you're told. Fit in so well they don't even notice you're there. That's easy. That's safe. But unforgettable? That's a curse and a crown. It means you don't just exist in someone's memory. You live there, rent-free, loud, disturbing, unedited. And most of the time, not because you wanted to, but because you couldn't help it. Because every time you walked into a room, the air changed, the vibe cracked, the illusion trembled. And whether they loved it or hated it, they couldn't ignore it. People don't get obsessed with surface, they get obsessed with disruption, with something or someone that shakes them, someone who mirrors their fear, their longing, their hunger, someone who shows them what they've been avoiding in themselves. That's why you stick. Not because you tried, but because you were real in a world full of plastic. And real is dangerous. Real leaves fingerprints on the parts of them they don't talk about. Real echoes long after you're gone. And that echo, that's what keeps them up at night. The way you said something that stabbed deeper than it should have. The way your silence screamed louder than their noise. The way you saw them, even when they were hiding, especially then. That's the part they can't forget. Not your looks, not your resume, not the carefully curated version of you. No, it's the messy parts, the flawed parts. The moment you didn't flinch when the truth got ugly. The moment you stood still while they tried to perform. That's what burns into memory. And the best part? You didn't have to chase it. You didn't have to beg to be remembered. You just existed so loudly that forgetting you felt like losing oxygen. And oh, how they tried. They blocked, they unfollowed, they ran. But obsession doesn't work like that. You don't forget the fire just because you left the room it started in. You carry the smoke with you. You breathe it. That's you in their lungs, in their blood, in the back of their mind every time someone else fails to match your chaos. It's not always pretty. Being unforgettable means being misunderstood, feared, misjudged. Because people only know how to categorize what fits their narrative, and you never fit. You walked in, tore up the script, and made them improvise. And they hated it, but also they loved it. That's what they won't admit. That even in their confusion, their anger, their denial, there was a part of them alive in your presence. in a way it never was before. You woke something up, and now they can't put it back to sleep. So they replay it over and over, the moment, the memory, the madness. They analyze you like a puzzle, trying to decode the formula that made them feel so much and so fast. They mimic. They mock. They swear they've moved on, but every time they find someone new, they measure them against the ghost of you. And nobody measures up. Because you weren't a moment. You were a movement, a shift, a mirror, a storm. You didn't come to entertain, you came to expose, to remind them that normal is a choice, and you chose not to. You reminded them of the chaos they buried, of the version of themselves they killed to be accepted. And that kind of reminder, that doesn't fade, that leaves a scar, a whisper, a pulse. And what's wild is, you were never trying to leave a mark, you were just surviving, being, existing in your rawest form. And that form was too much for a world addicted to filters. So yeah, they called it obsession, they had to name it something. But deep down, they know you weren't an obsession. You were a revelation they weren't ready for. A truth they still don't know how to live with. A crack in the mirror they can't unsee. And that's why they'll never forget you. You think you chose to stand out? No. That's the joke. You were never meant to blend in. You were built different, wired like a glitch in the system, a smudge on the perfect picture, and for most of your life, they tried to fix that. Teachers, bosses, lovers. They wanted to polish the edge off of you. Like being unforgettable was a problem to solve instead of a warning to heed. You weren't supposed to be remembered, no. You were supposed to comply. But here you are, remembered anyway, not for playing the game, but for flipping the damn board. It starts small. You make someone uncomfortable just by existing. Maybe it's the way you look at them. Like you're seeing straight through the polite mask they've stapled to their face. Maybe it's the way you speak, too blunt, too raw, too alive. They flinch, pretend it's nothing. But inside, oh, you crack something. Something they worked very hard to keep buried, and now it's leaking. That unease they feel, that's not your fault. That's your presence, doing what it does best. Breaking illusions. Because you weren't made to entertain. You weren't made to smile on cue and sit pretty in a row of carbon copies. You were made to disturb the peace. Not violently, no. Honestly. You show up with truth in your back pocket and a laugh that doesn't ask for permission. And that's the real threat. Not your chaos, your clarity. You know who you are, and worse, you don't apologize for it. But what happens? They brand you. Too intense, too emotional, too loud, too different. Code words, all of them. Translations for I can't control you. And that drives them mad. Because people aren't obsessed with what they understand. They're obsessed with what they can't. And you're an unsolvable riddle wrapped in barbed wire and delivered with a grin. They hate it. They crave it. They can't stop replaying it. That one conversation. That one look, that one time you didn't flinch when they expected you to fold. And the best part, you weren't even trying. That's what gets them. You just breathed. You just existed. You were the storm they didn't see coming. The hurricane dressed in human skin. And when it passed, nothing was the same. Not for them, not for you. Because here's the twist. Being unforgettable doesn't always feel like power. Sometimes it feels like loneliness, like walking through a world that keeps asking you to shrink, but you can't. You've seen too much. You've been too much. You've felt too much to ever go back. So no, you didn't choose this. You didn't wake up and say, I want to be the one people obsess over in silence, but you are. And not because of some trick or game or tactic, because you're real. And real is rare. Real makes people nervous. They'd rather deal with 1,000 liars than one truth that holds up a mirror. You don't flatter, you reflect. You don't soothe, you challenge. And that makes you unforgettable, not as a brand, but as a rupture in the routine. They won't admit it, of course. They'll pretend they've moved on, that they don't think about you when they're alone with their regrets. But they do. They see your face in strangers, hear your voice in quiet moments. You're in their playlist, in their dreams, in the way they double-check themselves now, because you left a mark that can't be scrubbed off. Not a scar, no, a signature, inked into the softest part of who they are. Not because you asked to be remembered, but because you made them feel something they couldn't fake. And now, every time they settle for less, they'll remember more. Every time they play it safe, they'll remember how you didn't. Every time they lie to themselves, they'll remember how you told the truth with a smirk and didn't care if it made them squirm. You showed them what it means to be fully alive, and that's not something you can just forget when the moment's over. So when people say you're unforgettable, understand what they really mean. They mean you disrupted their default setting. You broke routine with your reality. You made it impossible for them to keep pretending. You weren't supposed to be a chapter. They thought they were writing the story, but you were the plot twist, the rewrite. The moment the book caught fire and didn't apologize for burning.